Today's episode is sponsored by Sandals Resorts and Brightco Insurance. What's up, Chillas? Today we are with Dr. Sarah Hensley, who is the founder of the Love Doc Coaching Services and host of the Love Doc podcast. I am so excited for our discussion today on relationship advice, especially when we get to attachment styles and compatibility. Dr. Hensley, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you for having me.
So give us a brief background about your history, getting into counseling services and founding your company and your podcast.
I've had a very interesting journey. I am a social psychologist, and a lot of people don't know that only 33% of the discipline of psychology is actually clinical psychology. The rest of us are what we call experimentalists. So we are researchers and experts in our little niche of psychology. And so I have two sort of sub-concentrations that I graduated with as a doctor of psychology. One is health psychology and one is social psychology. And so those two things kind of merged together in my early career in research. I was very much interested in how things like social support or strong romantic relationships, strong marriages could buffer the effects of chronic illness. That's kind of where I started in my research journey. And of course, what we know in that area of research is that happy marriages really do provide a lot of protection against chronic disease, chronic illness, and can make recovery times faster for things like surgery, etc. So the effect of a healthy, intimate relationship on our physical health is very strong. And then through that journey, I was going through a very difficult marriage myself. And so I really became very interested in attachment theory. And I was spending a lot of late nights trying to read research on attachment to try to help my marriage. And I kind of became a little bit nerdy and obsessed with it because it is such a good predictive model of how people will behave inside of relationships. And so I was trying to understand myself, trying to understand my first husband, and I became a real expert because I read just about everything there is to read in the scientific literature on attachment. And so I got a career in academia, and I was a professor for quite a long time, really moved up in my field, became the director of a PhD and PsyD program in clinical psychology. So I was directing both of those programs at a university here in Kentucky, and sort of was at the top of my field, if you will. And I just became unfulfilled there. My marriage, unfortunately, took a very, very dark turn. There was a lot of infidelity on his side. Alcoholism was a really big problem. We divorced, and then very unfortunately, he very much spiraled into his addictions and passed away in 2020. Shortly after our divorce, he had quickly gotten remarried. And then I was dating another person at that time. He left. My mom got diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. My dog passed away. This was all in a 6-week period.
Oh my gosh.
And so I had what we refer to as an attachment crisis, where multiple attachments that I had, deep intimate attachments were ripped away at one time. And I had these grieving children, my 2 beautiful girls. I had to caretake for my mom. My dad was already kind of in the throes of dementia, and he was wheelchair bound. And so I was trying to be a caregiver to my children and to my parents. And I had absolutely no support. I was grieving intensely. My attachment had never really been healed from childhood. I had some childhood trauma. I grew up with a bipolar father who unfortunately was not the most stable individual. And I, had never really reconciled the trauma. So I knew everything there was to know about attachment theory except how to heal myself. And I had tried with lots of attempts, lots of therapy, lots of other tools, but I never really made any progress, even in the relationship post-divorce. I knew what I should be doing. I knew what the secure behavior was. I knew that I was dating a dismissive avoidant person, but I had this sort of fallacy in my mind that because I had so much awareness, I should be able to do something different. I shouldn't act in these insecure ways. And I chose a very insecure partner and somebody that was very emotionally neglectful and who actually left me the night my mom was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. And then that is, as we'll get into this, that is something that dismissive avoidants often do, is they really shy away from vulnerability, especially things like illness, really scare them. And so that they are the ones that are likely to leave if you get diagnosed with cancer or something like that. So I was in very deep despair in this time in my life. And first and foremost, God met me where I was at. I didn't have a real relationship with God, and I came into one. And it really was life-saving because I became very, very ill. My nervous system just basically collapsed at that time. And I became nearly bedridden with severe vestibular migraine disease and was told, this isn't curable. This is a 24/7 kind of migraine variant condition, and we don't know how to treat it, and we don't know how to cure it, and we don't know if you'll ever be able to feel normal again. And I was devastated, and God brought me out of that. And then when I had enough stability, I put my scientist hat on and I dug into the research. I said, I want to heal my attachment, which is really tied to how your nervous system functions in general, but mostly around intimacy. And so when I did that, what I found was some really great science around mindset work, or what we call metacognition, and true emotional processing to achieve nervous system stability. And that's really what I needed. I had a nervous system that was just broken from years of childhood attachment trauma inside of my marriage, my attachment crisis, where all of my attachments were, like I said, kind of ripped away at one time. And my nervous system definitely took the hit, and that's what caused the physical illness. And so when I was able to really dive into these scientific tools around the mindset work and the nervous system healing, I just became a totally different person. And I became capable of really wanting and attracting and being able to thrive in a secure and healthy romantic relationship. And it was not long after my recovery from the chronic migraines, which I was told I would probably not recover from. Thank the Lord for that. I met my husband. And so I'm happily married to my second husband. He's adopted my children. And we just have a wonderful marriage. And he is actually the one that encouraged me to put my healing journey out there. And I started posting on TikTok, and I started just talking about my healing journey and what I went through, and really quickly developed a very large following. And my husband kept saying, you need to bring this to people and to help people one-on-one. And so I ended up opening up my coaching practice, and that grew extremely quickly. And everything that has come out of that, including the Love Doc podcast, has been so fulfilling. And I've been able to help people achieve healthy and secure relationships by healing their attachment trauma that occurs in childhood. So people don't really understand that what happens in childhood is so very impactful in how we will behave in romantic relationships as adults. So that's my story.
Thank you for sharing all that. And I'm a little choked up because I told you before we started recording that just some of the things I saw on just simply your About Me, basically, on your website, I kind of related to, but I didn't realize how parallel a lot of what you've gone through, I've gone through. And I'll give a Cliff's Notes, and I've never really talked publicly about my past stuff. I've mentioned I'm divorced and all that, but very similar to you. I didn't know I had undiagnosed, traumas that I never really faced, and how it manifested in me until I went through my marriage with my ex-husband, who I try not to talk about him much because he also is now deceased. Last September, he committed suicide. It was about a year after our divorce was final. But he also had a lot of childhood trauma and mental illness that just wasn't being dealt with, alcoholism as well. I had a restraining order on him between the divorce and his death. It was really bad. But going through the trauma of the divorce itself, which was terrifying, and I had to secretly escape my house because I didn't want to become a statistic. It was that bad. The positive of it, much like you, was it forced me to rip off the Band-Aid and do the homework on myself, because I had this pattern, including with my ex-husband, this pattern of choosing the bad boys and I'm going to fix them and I'm going to show them what love is. And a lot of narcissists, and I'm not saying narcissists slightly, like really doing the homework and realizing coverts to malignant, depending on the person. And why did I let all this toxic in my life? And I too had childhood things that I didn't realize and stuff in my teenage years. Like when I was 16, like I didn't realize I stuffed down my friend committed suicide, and then 6 months later I was sexually assaulted. Like, and then how that manifests. And so much like you, like I read The Body Keeps a Score, and that was a big eye opener for me, right? And then as time went on and my divorce was becoming final and I started learning attachment theory, one of my favorite books is Attached. And it really made me wake up to realize like, oh, I have this anxious attachment style, and here's where it stemmed from, right? And here's how it manifested in these other relationships. Like, this is why I didn't give these couple of nice guys a chance. That I feel guilty that I like ghosted and was not emotionally mature in handling those situations, right? And they were genuinely good guys. And here's why I went for these more toxic guys that I thought I could fix, because I think I was trying to fix myself. And you also kind of mirror where you're at sometimes, right? And so I really appreciate you sharing your story, because it gives me more confidence to, one, know I'm not alone, and two, to also speak out more about what, I've been through. But I'm now in a healthy relationship with my love, Dave, and I moved in with him and his 3 more adult children. They're 16 and 20, but he too did the homework from his divorce, and, which was long before mine, but we both learned about attachment styles and why we went to relationships we went into and bonded over actually a lot of the traumas and things that we had been through. So thank you for sharing that. And I think you're going to give a lot of wonderful advice today, because I'm sure a lot of people listening have dealt with similar situations, want to figure out how to communicate better with their partner. Because I think that's something with attachment styles is the number one key piece, right, is communication. Because like you can think you're speaking English, but your partner's speaking French, and really, it's just you're anxious and you're avoidant.
Well, thank you so much for being vulnerable and sharing your story. And I'm so sorry for these experiences that you've been through. And it is a very kind of strange place to be grieving someone that created so much pain in your life. I also had the EPO against my ex and went through all of that. And he was a diagnosed narcissist. And so it was, narcissistic abuse is not for the faint of heart. And it takes a lot of to recover from, and to try to grieve someone and sort of reconcile the loss of someone who also created so much pain is a very precarious position. And so thank you for sharing that with me. And, I'll pray for your continued healing from that. And from what you've been through. So yeah, happy to talk about attachment, because I can talk about it all day. I love it. It's the work of my life.
So for those that aren't familiar with the attachment styles, can you break down what they are and what they mean?
Absolutely. So people need to understand that their parents, when they're young children, are their first mirrors of intimacy. So our parents really teach us what it means to be close to someone, emotionally close, physically close. When our parents can be well-meaning, but they miss the mark sometimes on especially what we call emotional attunement, which is just the ability to recognize, speak about, and provide empathy for the emotions of their children. There are some very lasting consequences to not being able to do that consistently enough, or to do that at all. There are some severe lasting consequences, and we call those our adult romantic attachment styles. So we have 4 attachment styles, and there's very strong predictive power. Most people are going to fit well into one of these 4 boxes. And a lot of people resist being put in a box, and I understand that. And for the most part in psychology, we don't box people in very much. But when it comes to romantic behavior, there has to be some predictability, or there would be no mating strategy that we pick up on in order to continue the human race. So romantic behavior is actually quite predictable, and these boxes really capture people's behavior very, very well. There may be about 10 to 15% of people that will say, I don't fit perfectly into one of these 4 attachment boxes, but the majority of people do. The majority of people will hear this and go, oh my gosh, that's me in X, Y, or Z attachment box. So we have 4 of them. I'll start with the secure box. The secure attachment style is what we we all sort of strive to be. Older research suggested 50% of the population was secure. Newer research are saying that is drastically dropping, that it's more like 20% to 25% of the population of adults is securely or are securely attached. Um, so, what is secure attachment? Secure attachment is formed when in childhood, parents are able to consistently provide emotional attunement to their children, proper emotional and physical boundaries with their children. They are able to communicate openly and repair disruptions with their children if conflict happens. And overall, they usually model a healthy romantic relationship with their marriage partner to their children. And so children learn in two ways. They learn through modeling, which is by observing, and they learn through experience, so felt experience with interactions from their caregivers. So secure parents are really able to attune to their children's emotions. And what does that look like? I try to give an example of, a 3-year-old let's call him little Johnny, on the playground, and he falls down and he skins his knee and he's bleeding and he's 3, so he doesn't really know what blood is and what it means. And so he cries for his mom and he's screaming and he's crying and he's very upset. And mom comes over, and a very emotionally attuned mother would try to sort of attune by recognizing the pain, labeling what's going on, and providing a sense of safety to that child during this experience. So it might look like, oh, buddy, you fell down. Oh, boy, that hurts, doesn't it? I know that was scary when you fell, wasn't it? Does it burn? I know. I'm so sorry, baby. Mommy's here. I'm going to fix that right up for you. So what did that do? Well, it told the child, I hear your pain. This is what it is. You are scared. You are hurting. But actually being vulnerable and expressing that emotion was good because it led you to me, which is safety. So it teaches us as adults that intimacy and vulnerability is safe and that it's a good thing. And that child is going to be able to sit with the difficulty of those emotions in his body while mom is a safety anchor. Mom's nervous system is very regulated. She is providing safety while the child is experiencing true emotional processing, which is allowing emotions to come up and naturally come down in that wave that they do. And when that happens, the brain takes the message of the emotion, the brain integrates it into the psyche, and then we can release that emotional energy. But not all children get that type of attunement. So we have an insecure attachment spectrum. There are 3 boxes kind of lying on that spectrum. We have, and I want your audience to picture sort of if we draw a line with 2 polar endpoints. On one end, we have attachment anxiety, and attachment anxiety always makes you want to connect and reach out to your partner and be with your partner and seek that deep connection. And then on the other polar opposite end, we have attachment avoidance, and that makes you want to push your partner away, seek isolation, seek independence. And so in the middle, we have the secure box, okay? And then I'm going to get to the magic 4th attachment style in just a little bit. But in order to understand that attachment style, you have to understand these sort of polar ends. So people that stay in the space, let's say it's the right side of the spectrum between secure and anxiety, we call those people anxious preoccupieds. So the anxious preoccupied person did generally have what we would consider a fairly good childhood. Like when I talk to anxious preoccupied individuals, they say, my parents stayed married. I knew I was loved. I had all of my needs met in childhood. But when I really dig deeper with them, what I find and what they often don't recognize is that the attunement that they received from and support that they received from their parents was just too inconsistent. And so I usually see something like there was a major life stressor of one of the parents, like the parent lost a job or had an illness, or it could be that grandma moved in. And so some of the attention that was being given to the children is now being directed towards grandma, and the child kind of ends up feeling abandoned in these situations in which the parent ends up pulling away and being inconsistent in how they attune to their child. Sometimes I see it in families with lots of children, 6, 7 children or more in the house, where there's just not enough energy or time in the day to give each child enough emotional one-on-one attention, which children really need one-on-one attention. And it's not that big families are bad, it's just harder to manage. And so these individuals get what we call intermittent reinforcement. So this is a really strong psychological concept. It was coined by B.F. Skinner in the 1970s, very famous psychologist. And essentially what it is just meaning that sometimes your needs are met and sometimes they're not. And it is unpredictable when your needs will be met and when they will not be met. And so everything in life that is addicting has intermittent reinforcement underlying it. Just drug addiction, gambling, alcoholism, and even addiction to people is created by this concept of intermittent reinforcement. And it will also create anxiety as well. So these individuals become love addicts. They receive most of their feelings of self-worth and validation from someone else loving them. They need to be in a relationship to feel worthy. And so they seek lots and lots of connection. They're sort of very clingy and very needy inside of relationships. They have all the love languages. They want them all. They are can be codependent. They're at risk for, enmeshment with their partners. They really struggle with a sense of personal independence and identity outside of their relationship. And then I think one of the hardest parts about this attachment style is they tend to be very boundaryless people. So they are very focused on others.
You're describing how I was for so long. Like literally that's the checklist. Yeah. If you're anxious out there, if you're resonating with this, you are not alone.
And it's a very painful attachment style because they don't realize that they often push others away with their big needs bucket that they don't realize that they have. And things like a partner seeking some normal independence in a relationship will be very triggering to an anxious person. And they will get a lot of anxiety. And then that will trigger what we call activation, which is just trying to seek connection. So they have a deep wound and fear around abandonment, definitely a peripheral wound of not feeling good enough. And the I am not good enough wound means you can try harder. So that's what they do in relationships. They try and they try and they try and they try and they exhaust themselves trying to really be what their partner wants them to be. And they're very not focused on, is my partner really meeting my needs? And what am I getting out of this relationship? And is it working for me? Because that fear of abandonment and really having your validation come from someone else loving you feels like this desperate need to make this relationship work, no matter what is happening in that. So they are kind of the mindset that it doesn't really matter what you give me. And of course, this is more subconscious. It doesn't really matter what you give me, just don't leave me. And so abandonment is really their biggest fear. And they can stay in relationships way too long that are not healthy, that are not meeting their needs. So that is very unfortunate.
You keep falling for people that are cheaters because they gaslight me into thinking that, it was just emotional, not physical, or, you know what, the blame. I've got the blame in the past from relationships. Like, I cheated because you XYZ. And it's like, wait, what? Like,
yes, you do that. And so I had to cheat. Yeah. I remember those days very, very, very well. And unfortunately, the anxious, preoccupied person is the least likely to end a toxic relationship compared to the other attachment styles. So they're very at risk for being in toxic relationships or being in relationships with more avoidant people who are neglectful and can't meet their needs. And then we see an anxious avoidant trap. So, but the other side of the attachment spectrum, if we move to the polar opposite end, so if anxious preoccupied is hot, this attachment style called dismissive avoidance is cold, okay? And so they only stay between the secure end and the avoidant end. So they can, attachment is on a spectrum. You can slide up and down in your sort of box. You can slide around in your box, if you will. So dismissive avoidant individuals grew up with emotional neglect. So, but when you talk to the majority of them, they will also say what the anxious preoccupied says, which is, I had a good childhood. My parents were around. My parents stayed married. I knew I was loved. But when I dig deeper with them, and I often ask a question, when you were a child, could you go to your parents for emotional support? And I have to kind of define what that is. Actually saying, hey, mom, I'm sad or I'm scared, or hey, dad, I'm afraid or I'm having anxiety. their eyes get very wide and they're like, no, I would never have done that. And I'm like, well, why? And they often say, I don't know why. I don't know why I wouldn't have done that. I just wouldn't have gone to my parents. I just would have handled that on my own. And really, what they fail to recognize is that they were emotionally neglected. And a lot of emotional neglect looks very benign, it looks very benevolent. And so, going back to the little Johnny example on the playground, if we have a dismissive avoidant mother who will go on to raise a dismissive avoidant son, she would have handled that situation very differently. She would have said, oh, Johnny, that's just a little scrape. You're fine. Stop crying. Stop making throwing a fit. It's not that big a deal. It's just a little scrape, bud. Go out there. Go play. That's why we're here. So dismissive avoidant parents unintentionally try to prepare their children for the difficulties of life by being emotionally tough, by denying the child's ability to be emotionally vulnerable. So these children, their emotions are dismissed, ignored, or even punished in childhood. If you ever heard, don't cry or I'll give you something to cry about, that is your emotions being punished. And it's this fallacy that if we shut the emotions of our children down and we try to teach them to be stoic and we teach them to be tough, that they will grow up to be tough. And actually, it's quite the opposite. Children are not resilient. We are told this lie that children are resilient. They're not, they're adaptive. And so the adaptive strategy of that is being someone who suppresses their emotions and dissociates from emotions. So they grow up and inside of relationships, when the relationship is very low stakes, like in the first early dating phase, they can be kind of effortful and they can look like a secure partner. But then there seems to be something with the magic 4 to 6 month mark of relationships where they start to really what is called deactivate or pull back in a relationship and sort of pull their vulnerability away. They start to shut down the intimacy. They start to shut down the vulnerability. They become more distant. They become more self-focused. They become less affectionate. They become more independent and give you less time. And then inside of relationships, they're very emotionally blunted. They don't know how to be emotionally vulnerable because vulnerability in their childhood led to rejection. and that was very painful. And their vulnerability leading to rejection creates this wound of defectiveness. And defectiveness is an extremely painful wound because it says you are broken and there's nothing that can be done about it. You are not fixable. And when you have this deep wound of defectiveness, when something is wrong between you and your partner, there's this sort of subconscious priming to be like, why bother trying? I can't fix it. I'm defective. I can't give them what they need. And so dismissal avoidance will often say that in their relationships. Maybe I just can't give you what you need. I always say that's the defectiveness wound spoken out loud. And inside of relationships, they very much struggle, not just with intimacy and vulnerability, but they struggle to repair conflict because conflict requires intimacy and vulnerability to repair it. And because criticism makes them very much feel defective on a subconscious level. It really hits their defectiveness wound. So they become insanely sensitive to criticism. Other people's emotions feel like criticism. Other people's needs feel like criticism. And then, of course, asking, for something to change in the relationship absolutely feels like criticism. And they will reject that hardcore. We usually see either some defensive,ness where they will sort of try to shift the story so that you're too sensitive or that's not how it happened or you don't appreciate me or, and sort of shut down your opinion about the situation because that shuts down their inner shame. And if that doesn't work, which it often doesn't because their partner, kind of holds their ground a lot of the time, maybe not the anxious preoccupied, but fearful avoidance, which is what I'll get to next, certainly will hold their ground and fight harder to be understood. They will run and hide. The other way to deal with internal shame tied to defectiveness is to hide. And so they will shut down, they will pull away.
Or even break up.
And even break up. They are known to ghost people after fights. They are known to divorce people after a fight in a marriage. They can leave very abruptly inside of relationships, and that is a very painful thing for partners to experience. And so they tend to be these really self-directed individuals. They really struggle to notice other people's needs, especially their romantic partners. Sometimes they're even people pleasers outside of their relationship while they completely ignore their romantic partner.
Interesting.
So yeah, and part of that is because their parents really focused on responsibility and achievement and what the outside world thinks of you versus what the inside world or your parental sort of environment relationship is. It's like, how do you present to the outside world? And do you present as someone who is strong and who is capable and who has their life together? And that is what they want to present to the outside world. But in their inside romantic relationship, they're very, very honestly emotionally stunted. And it's a hard word to kind of say, but they never developed the ability to feel their own feelings, therefore understand other people's feelings. So they really do not understand other people's feelings very well because they don't understand their own. You can't understand other people's feelings if you've never met your own and had to cope with your own. And so they tend to be extremely neglectful romantic partners, and they just really make people miserable inside of their relationship. And they tend to attract people who have more anxious tendencies.
I was just about to ask you that. Is that why the two always, and speaking from personal experience, the two always seem to find each other because they're both seeking to have what the other one has, but don't know how to, like...
That's right. So insecure people are attracted to their shadow traits, and shadow traits are the traits that we suppress within ourselves. So the anxious preoccupied is suppressing their own needs and their own boundaries. So they are attracted to the dismissive avoidant because the dismissive avoidant person has strong boundaries and, it meets their own needs very well. And the anxious preoccupied person is neglectful of their own needs. So here they are meeting someone who meets their own needs very well, who's very emotionally strong and independent, and those are the traits they suppress within themselves. So we seek to sort of complete ourselves through our partner when we are incomplete on our own. And so that leads me to talk about the third attachment style, which a lot of other therapists, coaches, do not talk about this attachment style. And really, it's one of the fastest growing attachment styles that we see, which is fearful avoidance. And fearful avoidants have both an anxious side and an avoidant side. So they have this whole attachment spectrum, and they can flop from anxious and flip-flop to avoidant. And so they can really confuse people because they can really seek connection and want deep intimacy only to pull away and shut down and go avoidant. And so they can create a real push-pull dynamic inside of relationships. And so what causes this attachment style? Usually big T trauma in childhood. So we see things like a really nasty divorce between parents where the child was put in the middle, maybe even asked to decide, who do you want to live with? They may have been parentified by their parents, where their parents used them as a therapist to vent about the other parent. We see things like a parent with a substance abuse issue that was very disruptive to the family, a parent with a severe mental illness. That was the case in my childhood with my father, who was bipolar. We see being subjected to abuse, maybe witnessing domestic violence or being punished really severely to the point of abuse. Maybe there was verbal or emotional abuse in the household that was really prominent. Certainly, even sexual abuse outside of the home can be a trigger for fearful avoidant attachment. We can see the abandonment of a parent, the death of a parent, and that's something my children experienced, and they struggled with fearful avoidance, and we've had to do a lot of work around that. So these types of big T traumas, when they happen, the little child will look at their parent or parents, the dysfunctional parent, or if both are dysfunctional, both parents, and say, oh, wow, okay, you can't love me in a way that feels good to me. You are not safe. And so the parent becomes a source of both love and pain. And so love and pain become deeply intertwined for the fearful avoidant. It's like love and pain are two sides of the same coin. So the fearful avoidant develops a very strong wound around betrayal. Like, if my own parent can't love me, that's a betrayal, and who else ever would? If my own parent, who's supposed to love me unconditionally, can't do it, who ever would? And so I have a lot of people that think that they're a dismissive avoidant or an anxious preoccupied, and they are really a fearful avoidant that has both sides of attachment.
I realized that when I did my homework, but it was weird.
Yeah.
And tell me if you've seen this in your practice. I realized, and thanks to the book Attached is when I really realized about the fearful attachment. I was that with the good guys. I'd get fearful once it got oh, this is too good. This is shoe gonna drop, blah, blah, blah. But with the bad boys, I stayed anxious.
Fearful avoidance will usually act in opposition to partner. They're usually not very attracted to secure partners because their nervous system, again, if you associate love with pain, they mistake fear for excitement because fear and excitement are the same feeling in the body.
Yep.
And so fearful avoidance they bypass red flags, and they are the most likely to choose narcissistic partners because they were likely subjected to some very dysfunctional or even abusive dynamics in childhood. And so again, we tend to seek familiar, and we tend to seek things that will complete us. So if our deepest fear is that we are going to be betrayed, we are going to choose people that will betray us. If our deepest fear is we are going to be abandoned, we will choose people that will abandon us. Right. And so these subconscious wounds tend to be a big self-fulfilling prophecy. And that's very unfortunate. So fearful avoidance, I always try to say they have very high trait variability, which means one fearful avoidant will definitely not look like the next fearful avoidant. Unlike the anxious, preoccupied, and dismissive avoidant that have low trait variability, that are very they're very similar in their behavior. So it's almost like the dismissive avoidance and anxious preoccupieds go to AP or DA university and get a diploma, and they all kind of act the same in terms of their attachment. That is not so for the fearful avoidant. We have ones that lean very, very anxious. We have ones that lean very, very avoidant. We have some that kind of have equal amounts of anxiety and avoidance within them, and they can be really push-pull inside of a relationship. But they tend to act in opposition to partners. So if a fearful avoidant is with the dismissive avoidant, they will be very anxious because that dismissive avoidant is more avoidant than they are. So it will push them into anxiety. If a fearful avoidant is with an anxious preoccupied person, they will go very avoidant because, the anxious nature of the other partner is going to push them into avoidance. So again, you can't really seek love and try to avoid betrayal very well. It becomes a dance that you do, and you become somebody who's very inconsistent inside of relationships. So they tend to have strong reactions during conflict. They tend to have a strong fight response. Some of them have a long fuse where they sort of hold it in and build resentment, and then it all blows out and blows up. Some of them have a short fuse where they can come out of the gate sort of reactive in conflict. But their deepest need is to be understood. Their deepest fear is to be betrayed. And really, not being understood is the biggest betrayal for the fearful avoidant. So they look at all the things that their partner does. And if their partner can't guess their needs and meet them really well, if there is a moment of misattunement or a moment where their partner doesn't get it right for them, they see it as this big betrayal. Like, you can't love me how I need to be loved. Therefore, you have betrayed me. Therefore, I cannot trust you. And that will cause them to sort of pull back and shut down into their avoidant side. Or it can, depending upon, what side they're on at any given moment or in any given relationship, they might activate and really seek to try to beg and plead and force that person into connection, even though they have hurt them. So their behavior is extremely variable, all over the place. They can move the goalpost around. They can protest and do the silent treatment. Their behaviors tend to be the most dysfunctional of all of the attachment styles. And that was my attachment style. So, I have a special place in my heart for the fearful avoidance. But those are the 4 boxes. And so a lot of people might go, oh, I don't know, I kind of see myself in all of them. And if you do, that's a really strong sign you're probably fearful avoidant.
Imagine a wedding day where each detail is already taken care of, allowing you to savor every moment. At Sandals, your dream wedding can finally become a reality. From intimate elopements to grand celebrations, Sandals offers customizable packages for every size and style. Plus, everything is included: your accommodations, gourmet dining, premium drinks, and all your wedding services. You get a dedicated wedding planner and an on-site team to manage everything from ceremony to reception. And here's a really sweet deal. Stay 7 nights or longer in a club or butler-level room, and you'll receive their Sweetheart Wedding Package, completely on them. That means your ceremony, decor, and even a delicious 2-tier wedding cake. For those of you who really want to be sure, you can even test drive your wedding experience before you book it. Stop dreaming and start planning. Head over to sandals.com today or call 1-877-SANDALS to create your unforgettable wedding experience. And you mentioned that it's one of the ones that in psychology they don't really recognize as much as the other traits, but you said it's growing fast. And why do you think that is?
I think it is because we are raising more and more insecure and mentally ill children. Our mental health crisis is only increasing. Social media, access to technology, it is ruining our mental health. It is messing up our dopamine reward systems in our brains. It is causing parents to be distracted on their phones and misattuning to their children, because now so many people work from home. And, when you work from home, you have to kind of be sort of chained to technology, and that can lead to a lot of moments of distraction or misattunement or frustration. We're not leaving the office and leaving it at work and coming home and being able to be really present with our children. We are sort of 24/7 addicted to our phones and technology. And so that can stress our nervous systems. It can frustrate us. It can disrupt our sleep. I think teenagers today, I know my teenager, you don't even have to be in person to hang out with your friends. You can have a group FaceTime sort of situation where you're just hanging out in your room, yet it feels like your friends are there, but they're not there. And it's not the same type of connection that we used to have with people. And so I think these more shallow connections are also disrupting trust. It's a lot easier to betray someone when you are not physically around them as much, when you're more of a FaceTime friend. And then unfortunately these children are learning through lots of exposure to social media that the world is not really a safe place. And I'll take just a recent, news event, the shooting of Charlie Kirk. It was a very gruesome shooting, and it was available immediately on TikTok, I believe on Instagram and other social media platforms. And so we have these. I mean, my daughter saw it before I did. She saw somebody's, head get blown off, and we're like getting desensitized to how truly traumatic that is for our nervous systems. And so you can't grow up constantly being exposed to these massive types of tragedy and traumas and expect your nervous system to develop properly and in a healthy way and to feel safe and to feel secure. And that is what securely attached people have, is a deeply safe nervous system. So I think fearful avoidance is climbing for a variety of reasons, the mental health crisis being one of them.
You saying that, we've become so desensitized, I think, to shootings just in general. There's so many mass shootings, it seems like, every single day in our country. And, I mentioned I went through some traumas at 16, and just thinking again, I was 16, a sophomore, when Columbine happened. I will literally get an alert about another mass shooting, and you barely see a blip on the news about it. And people are just like, oh, that happened. And it's like, what? Like, this is a big deal.
Yeah.
Are we this desensitized now to tragedy?
We think we are, but our nervous systems are not. So our nervous systems can be responding, pumping out cortisol and adrenaline, maybe not to the amount that we really feel super disrupted, but on a low level that is continuing to teach the brain that the world is unsafe. And in some ways, the world is unsafe. Although crime is a lot lower than it was, in the 70s and 80s, things like mass shootings, of course, are rising. And it is extremely unfortunate, but it is a consequence of the mental health crisis of this country. It is a crisis of not raising securely attached kids, because your mental health very much depends on the security of the attachment you have to your caregivers, because that is directly tied to how your nervous system develops. And if we have someone with an extremely disrupted nervous system, we are going to see eventual mental health issues. We're going to see mental illness. That is the consequence of a severely disrupted neurodevelopment track. And so raising secure children can be the way that we break this epidemic in our country. And so that is one of my missions, is to teach people as adults to earn their attachment security so they can go on to reparent their children. It is always possible to turn your child's attachment around. And that's what I tell my clients, because a lot of times, especially in my group program, I'll see people just bursting into tears when I talk about how an attuned parent behaves, and they realize that they hadn't given their children this level of safety in the intimate connection between them and their child. And they feel incredibly guilty. They feel incredibly scared that they have raised children that are going to go on to have dysfunctional relationships and potential mental illness as adults. And if they don't change trajectories, that's probably likely. And so I give them hope that, hey, attachment is fixable until the day that you die. Our brains are incredibly neuroplastic and incredibly flexible. And even if you have adult children, you can you can change their attachment. You can create a secure attachment to your children, and they can learn to, in cases, reparent themselves into secure attachment. And that's what I teach people to do. So
Mm-hmm.
it's never too late. And the consequences of doing that are profound, to their own romantic relationships, to their own mental health and physical health, and then to their communities and to the world. So my mission is not just to change someone's attachment, but it's to change the world. And I know that
Yeah.
sounds grandiose,
Mm-mm.
and it's not coming from a narcissistic place. It's coming from a true desire to see our society flourish and to see a society of peace and harmony and of love and of, true fellowship with our fellow man.
No, I love that. I don't think that's narcissistic at all. For one thing, you have empathy. It's the first sign that someone's a narcissist is they lack empathy. But to your point, like you don't know what you don't know, and I think learning these attachment styles and the tools to help work on them. You can't heal your relationship unless you heal yourself, as you've alluded to. And so with this, the best and worst in people come out with weddings and funerals, right? And so now that we have a basic understanding of what our attachment style might be, things might make more sense when it comes to your relationship, especially in wedding planning, because wedding planning, it's like your first huge, team building exercise, unless you're buying a home together prior to that or having children prior to it. And you're dealing with the dynamics of your family and friends. And now that you're probably realizing, like, oh, my parents are this attachment style, or I learned this from my parent, things might be making more sense as you're trying to choose your venue and vendors and having these conversations and maybe having conflict, especially when it comes to things like finances. So as we're going through a wedding planning process, how can we better communicate with our partners now that we have a better understanding of who we are as people?
I think the wedding planning process can really reveal your partner's attachment style because there can be conflicts. Um, and my best advice in general is work on your attachment security before you walk down the aisle. Make that more important than the wedding planning because your wedding is a one-day event. Your marriage is for a lifetime, hopefully. And who you marry, we know, is the biggest predictor of your happiness, your health, and your success in life. There is nothing more that we encounter that predicts happiness, success, and overall life achievement than who we marry. And we are so unfortunately drawn to the idea of marriage, and we want to have what our friends are having if they are married. I know that for me, in my first marriage, all of my friends were getting married, and I wanted to be married. And because I wanted to be married, and I was in my mid-20s, and I had, this fear that I would, if this relationship ended, which it should have ended. And I'm so grateful for my children that came out of it, and I would do it all again for my children. But if I'm realistic about, someone else's journey, and if they were going through the same thing, they would need to end that relationship if they were going through what I was going through during the engagement and wedding planning phase.
Mm-hmm.
Lot of conflict, which was a lot of abuse, which was a lot of it's my way or the highway type of behavior. Um, uh, it's not about the wedding. The wedding is a day, and it can be a beautiful day, and it's a symbolic day. But after that, you are somebody's spouse, and that is your lifetime assignment.
Mm-hmm.
And if you are someone who does not understand that assignment, and what it truly means and is not equipped and does not have the capacity to serve well in that role, you are setting yourself up for one of the most painful experiences that someone can go through, which is either a divorce or a very unhappy marriage. I deal with those individuals every single day, and I lived it for 10 years. And if you are making it more about the flowers and the music and the tablecloths than you are about how we repair conflict, does my partner run away and shut down? Are they reactive towards me? How do I communicate? Am I able to repair conflict? Am I able to meet someone else's needs? Are my needs being met in the relationship? If those aren't looking good, Postpone the wedding.
Yeah.
Take my advice. Postpone the wedding.
You don't have to break up. Just take a pause.
Postpone it. You don't have to break up. Just move the date and take the journey towards attachment security, because that is the preparation for what comes after the beautiful day. And yes, wedding planning can reveal a lot about your partner because it is a stressful thing. It's a stressful thing. And like you said, it might be the first sort of stressful event that you experience with your partner. And you don't want to do what I did and just chalk it up to, well, planning a wedding is stressful, so of course we're going to be stressed and we're going to not be our best selves. No, life is full of stress. Life traumatizes everybody at one point. You will lose someone you love. You might get an illness. You might lose a job. You might, incur something else you can't even predict.
Go through a pandemic and end up being 24/7 together. And then you really realize maybe this isn't the best.
Yes, we might go through another, who knows what we might go through. And if you are not equipped as a partnership to have the skills and the capacity to be emotionally available, to be someone who can have empathy even through receiving criticism or feeling misunderstood, you are not equipped for the lifetime assignment of marriage. And so I think we put way too much emphasis on the day. And when you're in your 20s, you don't know that. You don't know. It's about the day. But no, it's not about the day. The wedding goes by in a blink of an eye. It goes so quick.
And you might be in the honeymoon phase of your relationship still. Depending on how soon from dating to engagement to wedding planning, you may not have been together long enough to go through certain challenges yet. So you're still in the honeymoon phase.
That's right. And people, they don't realize that whatever you see pre-marriage will be multiplied times 100 10 years down the road. So if somebody is reactive, multiply their reactivity by 100. That's what you're going to see 10 years from now. If somebody cannot be vulnerable and they struggle with revealing their emotions, multiply that times 100. They're going to be totally numbed out and checked out in 10 years. They're going to be a stone cold, cold as ice in 10 years. Marriage amplifies people's attachment insecurities. It does not fix them. And so you need to fix it before you spend $100,000 on divorce. That's what it costs these days. It costs $50,000 to $100,000 to get divorced.
Just the financial, the toll it takes on you physically, emotionally, and mentally too,
is not even comparable.
Not even comparable. It's so costly.
We are not recognizing as a society what marriage really is, which is a lifetime commitment to day in and day out ride the waves of life together. Those waves can be choppy. They can make you fear for your life. And you need a best friend. You need a ride or die committed partner. You need someone who can sit with you when you are at your weakest and most vulnerable and tenderly care for you and step up for you and take the weight when you are not able to. And if your partner is not that now, they will be 10 times, 100 times worse.
1,000%. Like, you saying this kind of triggered a memory. Like, I have mentioned before on other things how I did try to call off the wedding months beforehand because I spent the entire engagement playing detective because I knew he was cheating on me, and finally found the evidence Halloween of 18, and we got married in May of 19. But he convinced me, like, oh, it's just emotional. I never should have sent those flirty texts. But I actually caught on because of her being cocky. It was our friend's wife, the neighbor chick. And and so anyways, long story short, I still went through with the marriage because I was very insecure, obviously. I was not having boundaries, did not advocate for myself, thought I could fix everything, right? And so married May of 19, COVID hits. So now we're together 24/7. And it just downward spiraled. It was so bad that I tried to work on everything and I got no reciprocal, on his end. And then it was early of 21 I went to get my hair cut for the first time since everything with COVID kind of lifted a bit. And my friend who does my hair, she goes, "You have a bald spot." And I have a bald spot right here in the front of it's still finally growing back in. You can kind of see if you're watching on YouTube. It took me $400 of shots and treatments to try to get that back. But it was right in front of my face, and I didn't even really see it because I wasn't even really looking at myself. But body keeps the score, and I was internalizing my unhappiness so much that my hair started to fall out.
I lost massive amounts of hair and it's never grown back. And actually right now I have a 1 week break before I get my extensions put back in. Yeah, my hair's completely fake. 2020, when my ex died and I went through my attachment crisis, I lost probably 60, 70% of my hair. And it came out in clumps. I had bald spots everywhere. Some of it has come back, but obviously as I became, more in the public eye, my hair was a source of lack of confidence. And
Right.
so I just, I experimented with extensions, and then you get in the extension loop where your hair all breaks off and you can't really come back from it. So I don't know, I don't know what I'm going to ever do about my hair, because it's just one of those things where when your body is in a traumatic loop for so long, and that's what it is, it's a loop. Your nervous system is so it is so dysregulated, and then your thoughts are so dark and your emotions are so heavy, and you don't know how to process emotions. And when you don't complete emotional processing cycles, they get stored. And those stored emotions continue to dysregulate you. They disrupt your immune system. They disrupt your endocrine system. They disrupt your vital organ functioning. They will cause hair loss. They will cause digestive issues. They will cause skin issues. They will cause chronic migraines. We're talking about mass disruption throughout the body. And of course, everybody's genetics are unique and it's going to show up in different ways. But absolutely, I had a lot of hair loss, and I think my hair would probably have come. I think more breakage now than anything is what I'm dealing with. It did grow back somewhat, but for a lot of people, it does not.
Yeah. This was how many years ago, and I had spent that money in the cortisone and it's still trying to grow back. But to me, it's just this was also a sign to me when doing the homework on myself. I couldn't even look at myself in the mirror. I was so unhappy that I went, granted I was not really leaving the house because it was still COVID era, this is still early 21, but I was that miserable.
Mm-hmm.
You have to look at yourself, be able to look at yourself.
Are you getting married because you just want to be married and it's fun and exciting? Or are you truly happy? Or are you not really that happy, but terrified of detachment?
Starting all
Most
over.
people are terrified of the pain of detachment.
Mm-hmm.
And then once you start wedding planning, this was me. I cried at my rehearsal dinner and I had no idea why I cried. And when I look back now, and really what I was feeling was deep, deep fear. Because I knew in the deepest parts of myself that I was marrying someone who was abusive and who was unpredictable and who was probably going to cause me a lifetime of pain. But I could not face that. I could not own up to that. And people were like, "Why are you crying? Tomorrow's going to be the greatest day of your life." And I chalked it up to, well, the weddings are just so stressful and I just wanted to turn out good. And I was lying to myself. What I should have said to myself, but I just didn't have the emotional intelligence at that point in my life, was, you're terrified. You know what you're getting into. You know this is not right. You know this person is not healthy. You know that you're not deeply happy. You want to be married because it's the socially acceptable thing to do, and you're scared you'll be alone.
Well, I was talking to another friend of mine who's in the wedding space and who's gone through divorce. And we both get asked, I'm sure you have too, well, why did you go through with it if you knew it probably wasn't right? And she said something that has always stuck with me. And she said, it's like you're on a high-speed train and you don't know how to get off. Because you have all these family members and friends and you have this attachment to this person, right? You love them and, even though it's wrong, but you almost feel like you don't want to be a failure by giving up. And it's so much more complex than some people realize. I think some people think oh, well, then you should have just ended it. It's well, it's not that easy. It's not that, it's so much more nuanced.
Yes, it's not that easy when you will feel shame and embarrassment and you will lose lots of money and, you're excited about it and you want to be hopeful and you want to preserve your own sense of self-esteem and self-worth. You don't want to, quote unquote, fail, right? And once you're in the process, it is a high-speed train. The
Mm-hmm.
deposit paid, you're not getting that money back. People are invited. People have bought plane tickets. People are, everybody knows about it. And you don't want to be, the gossip in the neighborhood of, oh, she called off her wedding. Ooh, what happened?
Everyone seems to be just as invested in the relationship as you are. So it's like not just you making this decision, you're almost like making it for other people.
And I hear about people that call off weddings. I have clients that have called off weddings, and I just think, wow, you were brave.
Mm-hmm.
Braver than I was. Way braver than I was. And I was too deeply insecurely attached. I was too anxious. I was getting so much of my self-worth from, the title of the relationship and going to be somebody's wife. And I wanted a family. And, I was afraid if I end this, okay, I'm 26. Am I going to, meet somebody that I love and have to start all over again and developing a relationship? And then I might be in my 30s when I'm having children. And do I want to be a mom? And ended up, I had my first daughter at 28, but our marriage was so bad that I waited 6 more years to have my second. So I had my second when I was almost 35. And now I have a beautiful 9-year-old at going on 44 years old. And I wouldn't trade her for anything in the world. But she was conceived in this tiny little good spot where my husband had kind of quit drinking for a little while. And it wasn't good, but it wasn't a nightmare either.
Mm-hmm.
And so
you cling to the
good
times, right? You cling to those good moments. Like, oh, it's going to be better.
There is that strong intermittent reinforcement. It's always the cycle of love, devaluation, discard, and it's over and over and over and over and over again. And a discard doesn't even mean that you break up. It can just mean you get the silent treatment for a week, right? That's a discard.
Yeah.
And the intermittent reinforcement of the love or the good times, it keeps you hanging around. And even when you're with somebody who's highly avoidant, who is neglectful, they may not be abusive, but they may just be extremely neglectful in a way that's a form of abuse. It's intermittent reinforcement because they give you little breadcrumbs here that keep you clinging on. Oh, they still do love. They still do care. And then, you get ghosted for a while, or you get the stonewall for a while, or you get, I don't know how I feel. I don't know what I want, of the avoidant person. And that's a discard.
Yep.
I don't know if I want to be with you is a discard.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's a maybe is a no. And so the majority of people getting married right now are in insecure relationships. They're insecure themselves, they're with insecure partners, and their relationship's going to be a disaster.
And we're saying all this with love. Like, we're not trying to criticize anyone listening right now. We're actually just really hoping to be raw, honest, and helpful. And maybe you are both secure and this is great. And hopefully you're just learning more about yourself and about other people in your life. But if you are resonating with any of this, I really hope that we're helping you right now, because I know we sound like we're Debbie Downers a little bit, but we're really just being raw and honest.
Yeah, we're just being raw and honest, and we're just looking at numbers, right? We have data on this. So if 70% of people right now are insecurely attached, that's the majority. And so it might sound harsh to say that the majority of you out there listening to this who are getting married, you're going to end up divorced. We have to look at the numbers. And we don't, and when you think about the people that don't get divorced, okay, let's think about if the divorce rate right now is about 60%, 40% of people don't get divorced. What percentage of that 40% are actually happy? Very few.
And we just want you to be happy in a happy relationship.
That's the point of a relationship, is to be happy. And so what, if you're not fulfilled, then what's the point here?
How do you know compatibility with your partner? Because I know it goes far more than just your attachment style. Like, how do we know that we are totally compatible with our partner?
Yeah, so compatibility is definitely different than attachment. Attachment-related dysfunction, people can be highly quote-unquote compatible, but also highly dysfunctional. So what is the difference? Compatibility is, do our values align? Do we like the same type of things, same type of activities, same type of TV shows? Are we morning people or are we night owls? Are we, do we want to live in the city or do we want to live in the country? Do we want to have children or not? Those are compatibility issues. How alike are we in those areas? My first husband and I were highly quote unquote compatible, not so much functional, because functionality has to do with our ability to handle intimacy, our ability to not act from our wounding, but to act with intention. We didn't have very much capacity for that, but we like to stay up late at night together and watch TV. That's compatibility.
And really look into it, because something you saying this actually just sparked a memory. When I first told him I was getting a divorce, like we're getting a divorce, like this is over, I had a therapy session. And my therapist, I hadn't talked to her in a while, which I should have been, because I wouldn't have gotten myself as far deep as I probably did. But she asked me something, and I go, well, he's my best friend. And she goes, but is he? Would your best friends say and do this, this, and this? And it was just like, whoa. You get so caught up in like, oh, this is my partner, this is my best friend. But it's like, are they your best friend?
Yeah. I love him. What do you love? Do you love the way he talks to you? Do you love the way he repairs conflict? Do you love the way that he meets your needs? Do you love the way he responds to you when you ask for a need or when you bring up a problem in the relationship? What do you love? Do you love the idea of this person? Do you love some of the good times when you're laughing together? Okay, I'll give you that, right? But what about when it gets hard? What about when you need something? Or what about when you're upset? What's the response like? That's what you're marrying, and multiply it by 100. That's your 10-year future. And I'm not trying to be a Debbie Downer. This is fixable.
This is facts. Yeah, it is fixable. Do the inner work for yourself, but also together. Do counseling. I always preach on here about premarital counseling. Can't stress it enough. Like, really, it's another team activity.
I may be biased, but I think that there's a lot of counselors out there that just don't really understand attachment, because we have a mental health crisis. People are being triaged out of their training programs to treat mental health. Even the marriage and family therapists are being triaged out in shorter programs with less training, and things got to be cut. And a lot of people aren't exposed to attachment theory, which is one of the strongest predictors, again, of relationship success and people's behavior. So find someone who's very attachment aware. I work with people all over the world. I work virtually, so my team would be honored to serve you through your healing journey. And we really, we change people's ability and capacity to be good partners. So if any of your audience is having a revelation right now, I'd be honored to serve them.
I absolutely love that. And unfortunately, we have to start wrapping up here pretty soon. But just a couple of things I want to touch upon before we do wrap. And one of them, a big one, and we've kind of mentioned it with children earlier, but the influence of social media on relationships. Because I feel like it's probably given a reason to the fearful avoidant, because you have all these different options out there now, right? I saw that on dating apps with people before I met my love. And also cheating, obviously, is a big one too, because again, all these options are at your fingertips. So talk to us more about that, about social media's influence.
Yeah, so social media just provides cheating at your fingertips. It does. It provides cheating at your fingertips, and that's very, very unfortunate. But at the end of the day, there's a character element to cheating. People who cheat have poor character development. It's not just, oops, I made a mistake. Oops, I was a little unhappy. No, it is a conscious choice to betray someone you love. It is an entitled choice. It is a selfish choice. It is a dangerous choice. Physical cheating is a form of sexual abuse, in my opinion.
Yeah,
I mean, of course, all abuse is on the spectrum, right? We're not going to compare that with SA, but there are STDs that can kill you and or make your life extremely difficult. And so that is sexual abuse if you get an STD from your partner's cheating.
Would you say it's emotional abuse as well, because the toll it takes on your partner?
It's absolutely emotional abuse. It's manipulation. It's, in the denial of cheating, it's coercive control. There are so many elements of abuse with affairs and infidelity, and also social comparison. Right? So not just necessarily infidelity, but, I'm following 20 different Instagram models. I may not be talking to them, but I might be looking at them and fantasizing about them instead of my partner. And now I don't have a healthy sexual relationship because I'm not connected to my partner when we're being physically intimate. I'm fantasizing about some chick on Instagram. So it's a risk. But when you're in a healthy relationship, social media can be great. I love sharing hilarious social media videos with my husband. It's a form of connection. I love sharing Intellectual social media videos with my husband because we share the same intellectual curiosity about things like relationships or, deeper thought or politics or things like that. So it can, when you are in a secure and healthy relationship, social media can be a wonderful bonding tool. But when you are insecure, it can be something that is used for evil, unfortunately.
Unfortunately, you see it too many times. And even when it's not, yes, the fantasizing, I guess it's part of physical, but it is an emotional cheating. Because, if you're having conflict with your partner, and this can go for texting, I think, as well, just from my personal experience, they start texting. And you might even find yourself doing this. You're not getting what you need from your partner, so you start texting this guy friend or this coworker or whatever, right? And you don't realize subconsciously you're seeking attention. And you don't think anything of it at first. And it's like, oh, I'm going down a wrong hole. Like, I'm not trying to go there, but I'm not getting what I need at home, right? And because your partner's doing it, usually maliciously.
Absolutely. You need to be above reproach in your relationships. You don't put yourself in even the tiniest of situations that could make your partner question your loyalty. That is what healthy and secure people do.
And if you come to your partner with like, hey, I'm feeling insecure about this and I don't like this or this makes me uncomfortable, and they seem resistant, how should you react to that resistance?
That's a neon red flag. You set a very hard boundary. This is unacceptable to me. I need you to think on this. I'm going to go into my boundary space. You talking about what your boundary space is going to look like. It means I'm not going to be able to do X, Y, Z in the relationship. And I'm going to contemplate what it feels like to move out of this relationship if, you are unwilling to meet me here. End of story. And then you have to hold it. And you have to be willing to realize that they may not meet that need. But then what are you walking into? You're walking into someone who's telling you, I feel like it is acceptable to be emotionally available to the opposite sex in our relationship. And that opens the door to physical availability as well. So are you saying to that? You need to say no to it. You need to have a boundary around it. And you do not budge on that boundary.
As someone that's gone through a second marriage, and I'm very much in love and living with my partner, Dave, and hopefully getting married in the future. For those of us in second, third, fourth time marriages, or going to be, what's your advice on navigating now that we have a little bit more wisdom from the first marriage, but maybe we still have a lot of work to do or some work to do?
Well, people tend to repeat their patterns. Attachment wounds are repetitive. You're not going to be different just because you have a different partner. You're not going to be different. You will repeat however you act in conflict is how you're going to act in conflict. If you get reactive, you're going to be somebody that gets reactive. If you are somebody who shuts down, you're going to be somebody who shuts down. You're just going to do it with a new face. And so if you haven't done the work, and this is what I really want to emphasize to people, that awareness is not enough. Awareness of your issues is not enough because these are deeply embedded into how your nervous system functions. And your nervous system is going to override your good intentions every single time in the moment of being triggered. So you have to do the deep work around actually changing how your nervous system functions around these difficulties with intimacy. So you got to do the work. It's not enough just to know about it. It's not enough to be like, well, I learned some lessons from the next marriage. You're setting yourself up for disaster. You need to do the deep work. Unfortunately, it's just that's the way it is.
And it might seem scary at first, but God, the clarity and peace you feel once you get through the mud, like ripping that Band-Aid off and facing your issues, it sucks. I'm not going to bullshit you. It sucks.
It does.
But you can point a finger, but there's three still back at you. You have to figure out what's going on inside so you don't repeat these patterns. Yeah. So you had mentioned something, I think it was on your website or your podcast. I can't remember which one. I apologize. But how Taylor Swift's relationship with Travis is a really beautiful lesson for us in the history of relationships, and watching hers firsthand. Tell us about where you're coming from with the Taylor Travis example.
Absolutely. So both of them have extremely strong nuclear families that they came from. Very extremely supportive parents that are still together, parents that are very available for their children, very close-knit families. So I always say, like, Britney Spears is an example of what happens in that world of fame and show business when you don't have attachment security. And her parents had very deep, if you read her memoir or her biography, then you'll see that her early years were filled with attachment trauma, filled with marital discord between her parents. And now look at her right now, right? What happened to her? Fame is I've gotten the tiniest, itty-bittiest taste of fame, having like 3 million followers across platforms and having people recognize me in different states and even in my own community. And it's hard. And I can't imagine being the biggest star that there is and having to navigate that and Travis, having his own fame and his own career. But you see them together, you see a secure relationship. And I think what Taylor experienced in these other relationships she had was fame is usually sought with people who are very insecure. And then the way they handle fame just only exacerbates their insecurity. So she was a secure person, I believe, in a pool of choosing from only very insecure partners who then did not treat her well in these relationships. And then she meets someone who actually is attachment secure, who has this strong family unit, who probably were raised attachment secure, right? And then they found each other. And what you see is the combination of secure plus secure. So you see a couple who uplifts each other, who praises each other, who has true deep intimacy. You see their intimacy. If you watch them together, you see the emotional intimacy. You see the compatibility. You see the willingness to overcome adversity together. And although time will tell because fame continues to take its toll, it does. It is one of the hardest things to navigate in love. I work with a lot of celebrities, and I have a big celebrity clientele, and it is so hard to navigate a relationship under the spotlight. So time will tell, but I don't think it's going to be their attachment insecurity. I think it will be, if they don't last, it will be just a function of their careers and misalignment and where their careers are going and a potential for something to go wrong there. But hopefully their attachment security, looking at them, it is obvious they have attachment security together. And hopefully that will carry them through any of the adversities that fame brings.
Do you have an all-time favorite celebrity or royal wedding?
It's definitely Taylor. Swiftie, I know. She is my favorite. I am hoping one day she sees something of mine and likes it because that will be amazing.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hensley, for all this great advice. How can we get more info on you and your coaching services and your podcast?
You can always visit me at my website, thelovedoc.com, lovedoc.com. You can please download the Love Doc podcast. We are available on all platforms. You can see me at literally every social media handle at Dr. Sarah Hensley. So if you just search Dr. Sarah Hensley, you will find me. If you're on Instagram and TikTok, please look for the blue check mark. There are a lot of scammers that like to try to impersonate me. So, Dr. Sarah Hensley on all social media platforms. And I would just be honored to work with you guys. I have services related to individual coaching, self-paced coaching you can do on your own, or a hybrid coaching program. That is my most popular coaching program to bring you on the fast track to attachment security and to equip you to have a healthy, loving, reciprocal, respectful relationship that you deserve.
Thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate you.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.